Good morning, all attendees. Welcome to the second part of this session, which was conducted on 12th of this month by Dr. Suhail Khan. Again, we have Dr. Suhail with us. Dr. Suhail, thank you for again giving your time, precious time, for our attendees and our students. I would like to ask Dr. Suhail to continue with the session, with the remaining part of the session. Dr. Suhail, if you can start with the session.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Suman. And thank you, Harleen ma'am, for organizing our second in the series of the webinar for pharmacy and allied health students. I hope you guys can hear me clearly. If there is any issue, please feel free to put it in the chat box so that we know.
I guess all can hear, sir.
Okay, great. Okay, so to continue with the second part, just a quick review on what we covered in part one of the webinar. We looked into the current status of management and research in COVID-19, especially in context to pharmacotherapy. We also looked into what are the ongoing dilemma and challenges that number of stakeholders are being faced in times of current uncertainty. We looked into a case study of hydroxychloroquine where it is going back and forth in regard to its place in the management of COVID-19. And if you would have read a recent update from Indian Council of Medical Research guideline, now they have issued an advisory that hydroxychloroquine could be prescribed at earlier stage for the hospitalized patient in the management of mild to moderate COVID-19. However, the criteria include monitoring, the baseline monitoring of cardiovascular status, especially ECG monitoring, and if there is any abnormal finding in the ECG, hydroxychloroquine is not recommended and should not be initiated. So there are very specific criteria that ICMR has listed that I would strongly recommend you guys, if you are interested in what's happening in regard to the management status, so you should go through. Also, there are a number of ongoing prophylaxis trials, especially for the frontline workers dealing with patients of COVID-19. So use of hydroxychloroquine as prophylaxis is also recommended, but there are very strict criteria on its usage. We also looked into a case study of one of the most prestigious medical journal, that is The Lancet, and how it withdrew one of the largest study published 2 weeks back on highlighting safety concern with hydroxychloroquine, and 3 of its authors who published that study requested that the finding should be revoked because they cannot trust the analytical team that compiled the data on safety of hydroxychloroquine. So basically what happened was, this paper raised concern that hydroxychloroquine could cause cardiovascular abnormality, and then they took a U-turn and said that no, we can't trust the data provided by the analytical team on its safety. So that prompted Lancet to withdraw that paper, which was fair enough. But the impact of this action was, once the paper was published, many multicentric clinical trials across the world were forced to stop hydroxychloroquine study because of the safety concern. And then this paper took a U-turn and said that there could not be significant safety concern, please go ahead with the testing. So again, now those clinical trial on hydroxychloroquine has been restarted. So very interesting times. Okay, very uncertain time. We don't know where we are heading towards, but that's how it is. But it has really opened our eyes on how we can adapt evidence-based medicine in context to uncertainty and global pandemic. As this second statement in the slide clearly explains, pandemic may feel frightening, but even more frightening is annexing or dismissing the scientific method in dealing with it, which should never happen. Then we looked into what are the key skill set that you as students, future practitioners, should know in practicing EBM. That is asking the right questions, then accessing the right evidence, then assessing the quality of that evidence for its strength, its weakness, its applicability, and then applying the evidence in your setup, and then finally auditing, that is self-reflecting on where you have gone wrong and what are your strengths, and then working on your weakness. These are the 5 pillars of evidence-based medicine, and they should be put to test, especially in regard to the current COVID-19 scenario. Then it's very important to be familiar with different level of evidence that we had a brief overview on, from randomized controlled trials to expert opinions, guidelines, and reviews. We did share some of the search smart strategies, especially when you don't have a lot of time in hand. Look into Cochrane database, look into some of the pre-critiqued resources that critique on your behalf so that you save time. So these were some of the resources that we discussed. BMJ clinical evidence up to date, the Cochrane collaboration essential evidence plus. Now BMJ in collaboration with University of Oxford have Center for Evidence-Based Medicine. So that's one of the group that I would strongly recommend all of you to check online. So I'll just type it quickly. Evidence-based medicine, CEBM. If you Google CEBM, it's a BMJ Oxford collaboration. So what they offer is, they offer a number of free online program on EBM, evidence-based medicine, equally applicable to pharmacy allied health professional regardless of their specialty. So do check this one. Another one that I would strongly recommend all of you to check is the Uppsala Drug Monitoring Center medication safety courses. They are free as of now, so you can completely do it free online and also get certified. So they provide you information on what is the science behind detecting adverse drug reaction, who are the stakeholders who work behind the scene on creating signal and alert on safety concern of therapy. So let's say if it's a new drug such as remdesivir in COVID-19, so they look into how many cases of remdesivir is causing harm. So more than 3 cases causing a serious harm generate a signal. Once the signal are generated, it is then communicated to different stakeholders. So very interesting. Okay, I think it will be very useful for you if you check this website and definitely enroll in some of their online programs. So Center for Evidence-Based Medicine, CEBM, then Uppsala Drug Monitoring Center, it's based in Sweden. Another one that I would strongly recommend you should check is the Cochrane Group. They also have an online program on evidence-based medicine. So yeah, these 3 you should definitely go through to upgrade your skill, your online skill set. These are some of the quality criteria checklist that I strongly recommend you should be familiar with. So these are quality assurance tool that kind of put a checklist, okay, put a auditor eye on how a clinical trial should be conducted and written and reported, how a review should be written, conducted, reported, how observational study should be done. So one of the quality assurance tool is Consort. Be familiar with it. You can Google Consort, download it, and see what are the contents. So it gives you information on how a clinical trial should be done, how others should do it, and how they should report it in a paper. The non-clinical trial, this is another quality assurance checklist. Then for reviews or guidelines, so for review, PRISMA is one of the widely used checklists. So let's say if you are doing a research thesis as a part of your PharmD or MPharm, and I'm sure as a part of our research thesis, we are expected to do a literature review. So if you are planning to move into higher degree research programs such as PhD, and the PhD programs are highly competitive, which I will share shortly. So publication play a very crucial role to make or break it in regard to getting a PhD scholarship. So a smart way to do when you are doing your thesis as a part of PharmD, or maybe honors, or MPharm, definitely in second year. So you can convert your literature review into a publication in the form of maybe a systematic review. So how to write a systematic review and how to check for its quality is given through Prisma. Okay, so you can Google Prisma checklist, download it and read it. So it will help you be familiar with how a systematic review is written and reported. For clinical guidelines, AGRI is one of the quality assurance tool on how guidelines should be conducted, reported, and updated. Okay, so these abbreviation: CONSORT, MOOS, Prisma, AGRI. Okay, so these are quality assurance checklists that you should be familiar with. We also discussed on what are the avoidable waste or inefficiency in biomedical research and how they should be addressed. Basically, it goes back to how good should be the research design, how big should be the sample size, what should be the outcome measures that is meaningful for patient, not only for the lab parameter, so on and so forth. We also emphasized on importance of globalization in healthcare research, going back to multidisciplinary approach, collaboration, international partnerships, so that we obtain diverse range of patients from different ethnicity, and then we see how a drug will behave in real world. For COVID-19, there are a number of ongoing multicentric clinical trials, but still they are far and few as of now. In Australia, we have a national COVID-19 clinical evidence task force. So we are looking into developing real-time reviews and guidelines as and when they are updated on management and prevention on COVID-19. All right. Okay. So the next part of the presentation now will be focused on, because now I have compiled a number of queries that I have obtained from you guys. Thanks for sending the email. So I have compiled the questions, and what I have done is I have created some frequently asked question list, and I'm going to answer your query through those scenarios. And also feel free to put your query in the chat box as we discuss in real time, so that I should not miss anything. This is your best time. Okay, so make sure you make the most of it. If you are not clear with any of your query, feel free to send it in the chat box. I'll provide a brief overview of education in Australia, the lifestyle, the programs that we offer, and then this will be a little bit specific, but then I'll touch upon general aspect of developing your career coming from pharmacy or allied health perspective. So that's where we are. So that's India, and that's Australia. Doesn't look that too far. The most common route is via Singapore flight. So we go from any of the major metro city from India to Singapore, and then the next connecting flight is from Singapore to Gold Coast or Brisbane. So we are located in the Queensland state of Australia, which is on the east coast. All the major cities, as you can see, in Australia are located on the east coast of Australia. That includes Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane. If I ask, I usually ask in real time on the capital of Australia, and many say that it's Sydney, but it's not. It's Canberra, and I'm sure you will be familiar. So Canberra is the administrative capital, but the commercial and business capital is Sydney. Academia in Australia. third most popular international student destination in the world. This is the data before COVID-19 happened, and I'm sure things will change. The world dynamics will change. Globalization in education will change post COVID-19. So we are closely watching on how things shapes up. But some of the positives in favor of Australia or Asia Pacific region will be its success. For example, New Zealand and Australia have been able to flatten the curve in preventing the spread of COVID-19. So these two countries are right there at the top, sharing the success story on how they achieved it, especially in regard to early tracking, testing, containing, and then preventing the spread. So as of now in Australia, the total active COVID-19 cases are 372 only. In Queensland state, where our campus is based, so our state is almost, I think, if you combine the size of Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh and Rajasthan, 3 states. So that's the size of Queensland state. So we have total of 4 positive cases as of now. So there are only 4 cases remaining COVID-19. So we are hoping to achieve COVID-19 free state in coming weeks. It's a huge country. It's a continent as well, as you know. 8 out of 100 top universities in the world are from Australia. 5 out of 30 best student cities in the world are in Australia. Let's have a quick look at what are the outputs of Australian professionals that is making difference in day-to-day life of common people around the world. So these slides specify the achievements of professionals who studied from Australia. In total, there are 15 Nobel Prize laureates. Penicillin was invented by Australian scientists. I'm sure some of you may be aware of it. So penicillin was one of the first of the antibiotics, and then rest is history. Wi-Fi again is invented by Australian scientists, and which every one of us are using in our day-to-day life as of now. So antibiotic, Wi-Fi are just 2 examples affecting us in day-to-day life. Some of the others example of innovation from Australia include ultrasound, in vitro fertilization, cervical cancer vaccine, okay, and so on. The top ranking faculties belongs to these 6 key streams, and we are ranked in top 50 worldwide in these streams. So I think for you the relevant will be clinical, health, and then life sciences. Okay, so they're right there in top 50. Lifestyle in Australia, very laid back, I must say, because I moved here. I'm from India, as you can hear from my accent. So I moved here it's almost 11 years now. I did my master's in management here and then PhD from Queensland. Very laid back lifestyle, I must say, friendly people, very multicultural. That's the best thing I liked about Brisbane and Gold Coast. Very vibrant and multicultural geography here. Weather is another plus point. Because a student from India, we are used to living in tropical weather, where we get a mix of summer, pleasant winter, and then a bit of rain. Australian weather is very much similar to Indian weather, so that makes it easy for us to adapt, rather than, let's say, moving to a country where there is extreme of weather, like too cold, where there is no sun for 6 to 7 months, and that leads to seasonal affective disorder. So for example, let's say if you compare Australia with Canada in terms of weather, Australia definitely scores because of its very pleasant weather around the year. That's where our campus is located. It's Gold Coast, the second biggest city in Queensland state. The capital of Queensland state is Brisbane. Griffith University campus is located in both the cities, in Brisbane as well as in Gold Coast. So Gold Coast is a coastal city next to Pacific Ocean, has a number of theme parks, very vibration culture, multi-cultural location. We have a lot of students from overseas, especially from Southeast Asia, then from India, Sri Lanka, and then Europe. So it's a good mix of student culture. This picture gives you at a glance view of the campus. So this is our campus. If you see the yellow boxes here on your bottom left corner, this is one of the largest public health care hospital of Australia. It's huge and it's new. So it was built around 2 years back itself. The Gold Coast University Hospital is the name. And once you cross the road on your right, if you see here, so you see the stadium and the buildings spread across. This is our health campus, a health and management campus. So is on your right, Griffith University Health and Management Campus. So if you see, we are right next to the hospital. So that has given us a number of advantages. First is to collaborate with them for student internship, student placement in particular. So our students get first-hand placement experience in different clinical wards and the clinical trial center of this hospital. Sports culture is very dynamic in Griffith University, I must say. And it was really a change for me when I moved here from India, because the students are into a lot of extracurricular activity. In fact, in the last Olympic Games, there were 12 students who participated from our university. 2 were from pharmacy. So they had to apply for special leave because it was their examination period. And obviously we did grant them the leave because they were participating in Olympic Games representing Australia. So out of 12, 6 students were able to fetch medal for Australia. 4 gold medals and 2 silver medals they got for Australia. And these they were our Griffith University students. So you can imagine how vibrant is the sports and extracurricular culture on campus. Commonwealth Games, I'm sure the last Commonwealth Games, if you have heard, Gold Coast was the destination of the last Commonwealth Games, and the Commonwealth Games village were right behind this hospital. If you see this green area here, just behind the hospital, that where the athletes were staying, the Commonwealth Games venue. Now, if you see on the far end, the other end of the campus, all the high rises, so that's the city, the Gold Coast Surfers Paradise, and then beyond that is Pacific Ocean. And then these are all residential area where a student lives in different suburbs. The good thing is the campus is very well connected by light rail or tram to all the major suburbs, including the Surfers Paradise, the tourist destination. A very picturesque location and beautiful weather around the year. I live somewhere around here. You can see in the middle between the city, the Gold Coast city, and the campus with Southport suburb, and that's where I live. Employability, I think I should cover on what's the current status of employment in Australia, which industries in healthcare are doing well. Okay, so the courses that Griffith University has designed make it sure that the student undergo appropriate industry exposure, especially in regard to, let's say, clinical trial industry in pharmacy setup, and then the professional services driven industry. So in Australia, the pharmacy or pharmaceutical sciences industry is very different as compared to in India. So in India, ours is very industry focused, as you can see. Around, I think maybe around 80% of the students who undertake pharmacy and want to pursue their career in pharmaceutical domain move to industry level jobs, okay, pharmaceutical industries. That may include formulation, regulatory affairs, chemistry, analytical science, and so on. The remaining, I think, goes into business, pharmaceutical marketing management, and then very few move into the clinical side. Australia is entirely different in that regard. In Australia, the the pharmacy profession scope is heavily reliant on clinical side. So 90% of our graduates who finish their studies, they move into clinical job. That includes community pharmacist, hospital pharmacist, clinical trial professional, or medical affairs or regulatory affairs, 90%. The remaining 5% goes into marketing management, because that is also a high paying job in Australia. And the remaining 5% goes further, higher education, into research. That may include PhD and decision-making level positions that I will discuss shortly. This was the result from the graduate outcome survey. So what we do is, once our students finish their programs, which I'll share the list of programs. So 6 months after they finish the program, we conduct, there is a nationwide body that conduct graduate outcome survey on where they are right now in their profession after completing the program. That is after 6 months. So 2018-19 data revealed that 97.2% of our students were in full-time employment after completing their pharmacy program, which is one of the highest in the health stream. It is right next to medicine. Okay, that's how big the scope is of pharmacy and pharmaceutical sciences in Australia. Scope is very high in remote region as well, but having said that, Gold Coast enjoy the benefit of both urban setting, because it's such a popular tourist destination, but it is still considered as a rural region. So that's given advantage, especially in regard to post-study work permit of 3 years rather than 2 years to the student who pursue their program in Gold Coast campus. So in contrast to students who, let's say, who are studying in Brisbane or Sydney or Melbourne, they get only 2 years post-study work permit. This is a student overall experience from different Australian pharmacy-based universities. The student experience is done by independent body, and they look into the quality of teaching, the quality of practical placement exposure, and skill development and engagement. So if you can see here, Griffith University is doing remarkably well as compared to our close counterparts, such as, let's say, University of Queensland and then Charles Darwin University. Now coming back to your queries, which I received through email and also through the real-time feedback session that we had last week. So what I have done is I have created some frequently asked question type of scenarios, and I will go through each scenario one by one. In case if we miss anything, as I said, feel free to put it in the chat box. So we'll have a question and answer session after this. So what are my options to study abroad? Now, this I'm taking in context pharmaceutical sciences as a background, okay? But this will also be applicable to health science student or allied health or MSc student, which I will share as we go ahead. So I'll share what are the programs on offer to do post-graduation, PhD, then option for visiting fellows and postdoctoral fellowship. Case study 1. So let's say a student has completed Pharm D, okay, or B Pharm, and would like to pursue a career as a pharmacist overseas. So what are the pathways? So here, let's say, is a student who has completed doctorate in pharmacy or has completed Bachelor of Pharmacy and would like to work as a pharmacist, okay, as a registered pharmacist overseas. What are the pathways? I'm giving you an example from Australian scenario because that's where I'm working from. That's where I represent. So if you want to work as a practicing pharmacist in Australia, purely based on qualification of Pharm D or B Pharm from overseas, so it's kind of a long pathway. The first step will be you have to get your qualification assessed by Australian Pharmacy Council. So check the Australian Pharmacy Council website online and look into the process of assessing your qualification, the pharmacy qualification, which is a simple process. There is nominal fee, I think they charge, to assess the qualification, they will ask for the transcripts as well as the final graduation certificate that you will have to scan, certify, and then send it online. I think they may require some hard copies, attested copies, but please have a look at the website. So that's step 1, have your qualification assessed. Once they give the clearance that you are eligible to sit for prerequisites, then begins the step 2. So step 1 is, I'll type it out here so that it's easy for you. So your step 1 will be qualification assessment. Okay, which I just shared, and this will be through Australian Pharmacy Council. Step 2 will be you will sit for stage 1 examination. Okay, so this is towards registration. So you sit for stage 1 examination. I'm not sure whether India is still a center, but if India is not an examination center, your nearby center is Singapore to sit for stage 1 examination. Stage 1 examination is all MCQ based. That kind of covers pharmacy as a whole, but predominantly the questions are usually clinical, case based, and pharmacology based, and then there will be a little bit of chemistry. Let's say if you clear step 2, then you apply for internship in Australia. So if you clear step 2, that means your qualification is equivalent to a B Pharma who finished their education in Australia. So for them also, they have to undergo internship. Same for you also, you will have to undergo internship, which is of 12 months. So here you will have to find a preceptor who is ready to take you as an intern. Once you have finished that, then you sit for pre-registration exam, which is stage 2. If you finish that, then you get the license as healthcare practitioner. Okay. So this is a typical process. If you have completed your PharmD or Bachelor of Pharmacy from India and would straight away like to pursue as a career of practicing pharmacist in Australia. Now, what are the challenges from my experience, personal experience I can share you. So step 1 is easy, you can finish that. One of the biggest hurdle here is step 2. Now step 2, what happened is, once you sit for stage 1 examination, I must say the passing rate, the success rate of stage 1 examination is very poor. Around up to 5% of the students clear this at any given point of time. 95% fail. It's pretty expensive. Around 5,000 to 6,000 Australian dollar is the fee for sitting at particular time. You can sit for multiple times, but then you will have to pay the same fee. Another limitation is feedback. You don't really get detailed feedback on where you went wrong. Okay, so that makes it very difficult to know, okay, where we should focus to improve in next sitting. So that's the biggest hurdle of step 2. The passing rate is only close to 5%. Then step 3, again, second biggest hurdle is to apply for internship in Australia to find a preceptor. Okay, this is very challenging. Like, who will be ready to take you as their intern? Now the preceptors are usually owner of community pharmacy chain, or the decision makers in the hospital from the clinical side, medical director, hospital pharmacist. So they need to be ready to take you as an intern. Now they don't know you, okay, because you are straight away applying from overseas. So that makes it very tricky. You know, relationship building is very important here, because they find it very difficult to trust someone who can be working in their pharmacy as an intern, because then they have to train you as well. You know, they don't get anything out of it apart from just a helping hand. So that makes it difficult for many of the international students to find a preceptor. Okay, so once that's done, then step 4. Now, step 4 again could be difficult, especially for a student from overseas, such as from India, because the pre-registration exam is clinical, highly clinical in nature. So there are case-based, real patients, scenarios given, and then the student is assessed. Once they finish that, then they are registered as a practicing pharmacist in Australia. Now, okay, so that's one path, conventional path. Now, what some of the students do is to bypass step 2, step 3, and join the mainstream. They enroll for a program, Australian program, that kind of makes it easy for them. So I'll maybe do a small comparison on how we can how following a slightly different path will make it more practical for student who is really serious to pursue career as a practicing clinical pharmacist overseas in Western world. So let's say if a PharmD or B.Pharm student decide to pursue higher education in Australia. In Australia, we have 2 pharmacy programs only. One is a Bachelor of Pharmacy, which is 4 years program, and another one is Master of Pharmacy, 2 years program. We don't have any other, such as MD, etc. Okay, so it's Bachelor of Pharmacy, 4 years, Master of Pharmacy, 2 years. Now, PharmD or B.Pharm student both are eligible to pursue Master of Pharmacy. So if you have completed your PharmD or Bachelor of Pharmacy from India, from Chitkara University, you will be eligible to apply for M.Pharm program. Now let's see how different this approach will make to our stepwise career development pathway towards a practicing pharmacist. So if you are enrolled for M.Pharm program in Australia, of course you have to check for your IELTS requirement, which is 7 overall, I think, but make sure you just relook at Griffith University M.Pharm International Student Eligibility. It's all online. So individual band should not be less than 6.5. Overall, we look for 7 in IELTS. So if that's tick, eligible for M.Pharm, then you need not to do step 1. Okay, so you can get away with step 1, which is and step 2. Okay, so pre-registration exam step 2 was the stage 1 examination, right? So if you are enrolled in M.Pharm, you need not to do stage 1 examination. You get with both the steps. You get away with both the steps. So what happens here is, once you finish 2 years of M.Pharm, then you apply for internship, which is 12 months. So this is after 2 years. Okay. This will be same for domestic students, Australian student also. The good news about it is 2. First is, once you are successful to fetch a position as an internship through the preceptors, it is a paid internship. So you are paid for 12 months. So you start earning in 3rd year itself, okay, which is basically your year of internship. Another advantage of doing it through the M.Pharm program is the university will help you find a preceptor because they have strong collaboration or professional relationship with all the preceptors. So preceptor trust that this student is coming from this particular university, enrolled through this program, so they can trust. So around 98 to 99% of our students are able to find a preceptor as soon as they finish M.Pharm, and they smoothly move into internship. Okay, so that's for 12 months of internship. The the annual salary that an intern gets is anywhere from 40 to 50,000 Australian dollar per annum for 12 months. So it will be 40 to 50,000 Australian dollar for 12 months. I think one Australian dollar is now around 49 or 50 Indian rupees. I'm not very sure, but you can check it online. Okay, so once you have finished your internship, then you do a pre-registrations exam, okay, that everyone has to do. The advantage of you doing MPharm here is the MPharm in Australia is heavily clinical focused. Okay, then 80% of the content is clinical. Therapeutics, applied therapeutics, patient care, patient outcomes, everything you are trained. So that's make it relatively easy for a candidate to crack pre-registration exam. Our success rate is close to 96% once the student finish their MPharm. Okay, once you have finished stage 2, then you get a license. The starting salary for a practicing pharmacist in Australia is anywhere between 65 to 80,000 Australian dollar per annum. Alright, so I just gave you a head-to-head comparison on, because some of the query that I got was, what can I do after PharmD? Can I pursue my career as a pharmacist overseas? Yes, you can, but this is the steps, okay, and the limitations also that I shared. Another option is this, of doing a postgraduate program. So you call it MD, we call it MPharm. Okay, so once you finish that, these are the advantages of doing it. So it's a 2 years program, and the third year is internship. Okay, just checking, is there any query so far? I can't see anything, but maybe Dr. Suman or Halin ma'am could see, but feel free to ask us any query as we discuss the process. Okay, so this is one option. This was a case study, I think, of what was the question here? Yeah, I have completed my PharmD or BPharm. Would like to pursue my career as a practicing pharmacist overseas. What are the pathways? So these are the pathways, okay, to work as a practicing pharmacist. Case study 2, I'm a graduate or a postgraduate in life science. So let's say the student is doing a BSc or has done MSc. What are my options to pursue higher studies overseas? Can I move to a practicing healthcare professional career overseas based on my life science background? The good news is yes. Some of the programs such as biotechnology, pharmacovigilance, biochemistry, BSc, MSc are eligible to apply for MPharm program, but there are some specifics for those candidates that you should check online, especially if they have completed pharmacology in their bachelor's or master's program. So you need to provide us the transcript, etc. If they haven't completed some of our special subjects that it's listed online, get back to us and we will let you know the process. But science background students are also eligible to enroll into Masters of Pharmacy. Case study 3, I recently completed my post-graduation, for example, MSc or PharmD or MPharm. Okay, so this is MPharm as well. And would like to pursue PhD overseas. So what are my options and what are the criteria for scholarship? Now, this is a research-based query. Those who want to pursue PhD overseas, what are the pathways? So this is very different from those who want to be registered as a pharmacist, getting a license. So getting a license, PhD will not give that. Okay, the PhD is purely a research degree. Whereas for getting a license, you have to clear all the hurdles. Now the question will be, why there are so many hurdles here? Why there are so many steps? The reason is very simple. In India, our curriculum is heavily industry focused, as you can see in BPharm. Clinical is touched up upon, but not much. And that's why the job prospect in India also is towards industrial side. Of course, clinical research, clinical trial is coming, but still we have a long way to go. Whereas in Australia, the job prospect is entirely clinical, as I shared. more than 90% of the students work in clinical domain, and that's where the curriculum is clinically reflected. The student really need to be competent when they are dealing with patients, because they are liable in case if anything happens by mistake. Let's say everything is documented. So what happened here in Australia is, as a pharmacist, when a community or a hospital pharmacist dispense the medication, they have to counsel and government pay for their dispensing service, okay, regardless of where they are working, in a private community or a public community or a clinical pharmacy. Their prescription dispensing fee is paid by the health authority in Australia. So that's why pharmacists needs to have adequate level of knowledge when they are providing patient care. Another thing is, the pharmacist could be held liable in case if they communicate anything wrong, any intentional error, patient can sue them. Okay, so the stakes are very high, and that's why there are series of checklists. So an overseas pharmacy candidate cannot straight away come and start practicing in Australia, because what may happen, what may be the impact? Okay, so they may harm the patient, because they don't know the regulatory rules and regulation, the clinical aspect, the complexity, and that's why there are a number of series of steps that a pharmacy council has outlisted here. It will be similar to any other Western country for that matter. Okay, so I'm sharing an example of Australia, but having said that, I have also shared you some of the shortcuts, some of the smart way, in case if you are really serious to pursue your career overseas. So this could be the other options. Yeah, next is PhD research, higher degree research career pathway. So a candidate recently completed post-graduation, that could be MSc, PharmD or MPharm, and would like to pursue PhD. What are my options and what are the criteria for scholarships? So let's move quickly. Now the first thing, as I always share, is eligibility. So the good news is all the three programs are eligible for PhD application, which is a great news. So if you have done your MPharm, you have done PharmD or MSc, you will be eligible for PhD application. So PhD application and its eligibility is one thing, PhD scholarship is another. I will share what are the criteria we look for in a potential PhD candidate who applied for scholarship. So I am the PhD program director for my school, for School of Pharmacy and Pharmacology. So I'm in charge of all the applications that we receive from around the world to scrutinize, shortlist, and then we put it forward to the health group. And then collectively we decide who gets the scholarship. It's a highly competitive process because PhD scholarship entirely covers your tuition fees, as well as it also gives you living allowance, which is sufficient enough for you for your accommodation, your food, and your miscellaneous expense. Okay, so the goal is that you should dedicate your time for quality research output. Okay. Having said that, you can work for around 18 hours per week part-time, apart from the scholarship, as per usual norms. Now, what are the things we look for in a potential strong PhD applicant who has applied for scholarship? So the things that we look for are your GPA. Okay, so we look for your GPA at your undergraduate level, plus your GPA at postgraduate level. For PharmD, we look for your last 2 years at postgraduate level equivalent, as well as both for MPharm, PharmD and MSc, we look for how much was the score you got in thesis. Okay, so you have to attach the proof of your transcript and score. A GPA of 5.5 and above is considered competitive. Same here, a GPA of 5.5, preferably 6 and above is considered competitive for scholarship, as well as how much you scored in the thesis in your PharmD, MPharm or MSc. So that's one. So this is academic scores. Next we look for is research output. So let's say if a candidate has a research paper publication, so that they are also scored on research output front. Paper publication we look for only in the journals who belong to the in the quartile ranked journal. So the journals are ranked in Q1. So these are the best journal in their discipline, Q1 group. Then we have Q2, the second best group of journals. Then you have Q3, the third group, best group of journals. And then we may consider Q4 as well. So make sure if you are planning to publish, select a journal that belongs to this category only, Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. If the journal is not quartile ranked, please do not consider to publish your research finding with them. This you can easily find through Google. Do a quick Google search about the quality of the journal and look into the web page of the journal. Also be careful that there are a number of fake journals called as predatory journals. They are entirely fake. So make sure you don't make a mistake of publishing your research in a fake journal, because that will be a big black mark on your professional CV and profile. Even if you are not aware that it was a fake journal, but the PhD selection committee will consider it that it reflects your knowledge, your awareness about medical publishing, okay, and may put an applicant in a bad light. So never ever publish in a fake predatory journal. So where you should track predatory journals, there is Bales List. They regularly update all the fake scientific journals. Google them, Google Bales List, and they update it regularly. There are some publication house that you should be really careful because majority of their journals are fake. Omics Publishing Group. Okay, it's a fake publication house. Big no, never go there. Okay, it's a no-go zone. Never publish any findings with them. And there are some more publication houses that are strictly prohibited. So when you make a decision to publish your research, discuss with your guides, supervisor, do a search online. Make sure they are ranked through Q1, Q2, Q3 journals preferably. And with you maybe as the primary author, first author or the last author. So preferably in research output under paper publication, we look for 1 to 2 papers. Okay, and if you have one paper but you are the primary author and it's published in Q1 or Q2 journal, that should be okay. Okay, if you have 2 papers and if it's published in, let's say, Q3, one in Q2, that also should be okay. So it depends on the quality of the paper that is being published in the journal. Okay, so your academic score, then the research output. So in research output, I'll just put it here. Another thing we look for in the research output is experience, work experience. So if you have any work experience, 6 months or above, you are also scored. Okay, get some bonus point. So work experience should be a paid work experience. Internship is not counted as a work experience. Okay, so any voluntary work, internship is not counted. So you're working properly as a research associate in pharmaceutical industry or clinical trial, bonus points for that. Okay, so work experience also count in the scholarship scoring criteria. So from your side, we look for academic score, publication profile, work experience, and then your supervisors are also scored. So let's say the next biggest task in PhD scholarship is finding a supervisor who is ready to take you as their student. And that's where a lot of effort goes into. So I'll share through email on what are the process for that, but supervisors who will be supervising you are also scored on their track record, how much funding they obtain, how much is their completion rate of PhD students on time. All that are also scored. So you are scored, your supervisors are scored, and then we decide on shortlisting the candidate for PhD scholarship. So when you apply for PhD application, you need to provide all this data, and it's all online system, straightforward. So it will ask you, upload this, provide this information, your research output, experience, academic score, supervisors, who are the supervisors, for example from Griffith University, who is taking you as their student, attach an evidence of proof that they have agreed to supervise you, and then you have to provide a research synopsis of maybe up to 4 pages of research plan. Okay, that's how you do an online application. Once you have submitted, then it goes to the selection committee and so on. So as I said, it's a competitive process, but worth it, those who want to pursue their career in research, because it completely covers your tuition fee and living allowance. You need not have to do anything, but focus on your research. Okay, so far we have discussed on career pathways for pharmacists. The MPharm program will also make you, if you are doing an MPharm program overseas, for example here with us, and if you don't want to work as a practicing pharmacist, that's also fine, because MPharm program will give you an eligibility to do PhD as well. MPharm program on its own will also make you eligible to work in clinical trial industry in Australia as clinical research associate, regulatory affairs associate, pharmacovigilance associate. Okay, so there are a number of other pharmacy or healthcare stream profession that you can get into in Australia, apart from working as a registered pharmacist. But having said that, if you have completed MPharm, why won't you use your registration license? You know, it's a big backup. You are a healthcare practitioner in a Western world, and that's always looked after, sought after. These are what our employers say about the students. So these are our preceptors. When I was saying, the pharmacist manager, the owner of a pharmaceutical mini industry here, Chris Testa. So that's where what their feedback is about Griffith University pharmacy students. So Griffith University School of Pharmacy and Pharmacology is top ranked in Australia among all the pharmacy pharmacology institute, especially because student numbers are limited. We don't take a lot of students, so there is a lot of one-on-one focused and interaction and skill development for the students. What are the scholarship options for MPharma? So I have provided a web link here that you can check, or just Google Master of Pharmacy scholarship options for students from India. There is a scholarship available that's providing, I think, a fee waiver of around 10 to 15% of total fee. Have a look at that. I'm not sure for how long it will go, but we started it this year, and it will be continued for next year intake as well. So our next year intake in 2021 will be in end of February and then July. So we are planning for 2 intakes for 2021 for international students. So this is also available online on International Student Scholarship. So she is our final year MPharm student who completed her MPharm and immediately got the internship in the hospital in pediatric oncology department. She did her B.Pharm, Bachelor of Pharmacy, from India. And then she was one of the recipient of Griffith Remarkable Scholarship. Griffith Remarkable Scholarship is highly competitive because it covers half of the tuition fee for MPharm. Whereas there is another scholarship that waives off around 10 to 15% of total fee, which is not so competitive because all the applicants from India will be eligible for that. So make sure you go through all the scholarship options online. PhD scholarship also, I've given you the information and as well as the web link. In web link you put PhD or put HDR, higher degree research scholarship, Griffith University. It should give you all information, but we just discussed that. Okay, I think that's all from my side based on the questions that you asked and the discussion that we had. So I'm open now to take any further questions.
Do we have any other questions? Attendees, do you have any questions?
Harleen ma'am, I hope we didn't go over time.
No, sir, we are in time.
Okay.
I don't see any questions coming in.
What you could do, as you suggest, they can send an email to you first. I think that will be better, that we follow proper channel. And then there were some query in regard to credit transfer that we are working on. Let's say if a student has finished 2 years of B Pharma and then want to move in third year onwards overseas, will there be some of the credit transfer? So yes, there will be, and we take it on case by case basis. So what I would suggest is, if you are interested, if you have finished 2 years of B Pharm in Chitara and wanna then move to do third and fourth year in Griffith, send expression of interest to Harleen ma'am or any pharmacy faculty, and then we'll take it from there on case by case basis.
Okay, ma'am, I guess I guess what we'll do is we'll ask the students to mail the question to us, and then we'll talk that down in one format, and then we can send it to Dr. Sohail. Will that be okay?
Yeah, sure.
Right.
Then there is also one more opportunity, but it depends on when the current situation subsides and we are back to new normal. But I can't see it happening this year. But next year, definitely mid-year onwards, what we do is we host final year B Pharm or PharmD student for what we call as an observership. So they spend 1 month with us, but again the student has to be at the travel and accommodation costs, but we provide them training in Australian context on clinical or hospital exposure, and through that also they are able to develop rapport with, let's say, potential I3 team. So it is kind of a placement opportunity for
Okay, Harleen ma'am, so we'll follow this channel that the students will mail the questions to us, and you can forward it to Dr. Sohail to answer those questions. And we can
Sure.
So that in reference to the credit transfer, we have to look at what subjects they've studied, and of course map the subjects at Griffith University as well. So I will be so once the student gets in touch with us, so we will be in a better position to coordinate with Dr. Khan and then do the credit transfer aspect.
Yeah. So what you could do, let's say a third year B Pharm student, you can obviously map it with your curriculum, and our curriculum is also available online. So you can easily take a Bachelor of Pharmacy curriculum and then you match it. And as I said, most of our curriculum is heavily clinical focused. So the credit acceptance usually will be for courses such as pharmaceutics, pharmacopoeia, chemistry, but not on the clinical side.
Right. All right, Dr. Khan.
I would have loved to hear a voice of our students, but I think we can't, but that's okay.
We can, of course, if they want themselves to unmute themselves, they can just type it. Just I can unmute them one by one. Anyone?
Like that. Any of you students, I would like to hear from you. Overall experience. If someone can volunteer and say something, that would be great.
Okay, any one of you just want to unmute yourself? Just keep it in the questions pane to unmute yourself so that I can unmute from here. Okay, Sambhavi Srivastav, just a minute.
Just share your overall experience.
Okay, Sambhavi, you are unmuted from my side. You can unmute yourself. You are self-muted. You can unmute yourself and you can ask.
Very good morning, Sohail sir. I am Shambhavi pursuing B Farm currently third year, 6th semester. Hello, sir, can you hear my voice?
Yes, I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, sir, it was a very good experience to hear the webinar with you and the career opportunities. What about you told? And it was very nice. I just want to ask some written questions. Like as you said that you consider all the tuition fees regarding the PhD purpose. And when there was a webinar on 12th, I searched online about Drift University. So along with bachelor's pharmacy or except that, what other courses are there in Drift University?
Okay, so I think, if I'm not wrong, I think your question was asking apart from pharmacy, what are the other programs pertaining to your discipline? So what you could do, you can opt for a generic one. So there is a Master of Medical Research program. That's kind of a pretty holistic program that gives you an overall clinical plus research exposure. But these are non-license based programs, as I said. So it will not fetch to a license, but some of the generic programs that I could recommend you can check online. I'll just type it out here. If you can see the screen, is Master of Medical Research. It's 18 months. Then look into sports medicine. Is another I would recommend for you guys. Looks into doping, drug abuse, and aspect. Criminology is another. Crime, laws and regulation, and then management.
And sir, is there any corresponding course as well for masters?
As of now, no. We don't have a full-fledged corresponding course, but we are planning to convert our clinical trial program. So we offer clinical trial course into full online delivery, but we are looking into the feasibility of it from next year.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you. All the best. Okay, anyone? I think we'll take one more and then I think we can wind up. Okay, any other student who would like to share your experience, please unmute yourself and let's have a chat. My email is displayed here. If you have any further query, any specific query, you want to know more that we haven't covered, feel free to send me an email.
Good morning, sir. I'm Amit Banerjee. I'm studying M.Pharma in second semester from Chitkara University.
Hi, good morning, Amit. How are you?
I'm fine, sir. How are you?
I'm good.
So my question is, can anyone do PhD after getting some exposure from the corporate sector? I mean, if anyone want to take job in any kind of corporate sector like vigilance, or you can say regulatory affairs, or you can say medical writing, after taking 2 to 3 years of job experience, can anyone come to the PhD to do PhD from India or outside India?
So Amit, you are in M.Pharm, right?
Yes, sir. I'm in M.Pharma.
Which discipline?
In pharmacology.
In pharmacology. Okay, great. So to answer your question, it's a yes, and it's usually preferred if you get a corporate industrial experience, because as I shared, when we looked into potential for scholarship, so definitely your work experience will add to your profile. So the answer is yes. A minimum of 6 months we look for in regard to work experience. More the better.
So someone says that if you want to do PhD, you have to go for the regular basis study, I mean, if you want to PhD, you just go for the masters. Don't go for jobs now. So is it good for the total PhD curriculum?
So in regard to job prospect, let's say if you're finished MPharm, no, it purely depends on what's your priorities. So we have candidates who have finished MPharm and straight away gone to do PhD. So they because you never know, the current situation is so uncertain. So why not? So if you have a project, if you have a potential supervisory team ready to take you as their student, and you have papers published at your MPharm level,
Yes,
so
sir.
that makes your profile competitive for a scholarship. So then why not give it a try? Give it a go, and then you will finish PhD. The advantage of doing PhD in Australia is you finish it in 3 years, or at the max 3.5 years, and it's fully funded. So you'll get it out of your way in regard to professional development, and then you can move further on postdoc or any of the career opportunities. Having said that, if you move into industry after MPharm, still it will be an advantage to you, because you will bring with you practical experience, okay, where you will be a value added to the supervisory team. So they will consider you in high regard, especially for further potential of taking you as their postdoc candidate also in future.
So after getting some experience and then come to PhD is a great option, right?
Yeah, so it is a great option, but I'm not dismissing if you finish MPharm and if you want to straight away do PhD. That is also not a bad option at all. But the thing is, it's competitive, as I said. Then you really need to have papers published to fetch you the scholarship.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
So thank you, Amit, for the question. Harleen ma'am, if you would conclude the session.
I would just like to conclude the session by saying thank you to Dr. Khan, to the attendees, to the staff members, and to Dr. Suman, to you too. Without everyone here, we couldn't have made this session successful. And Dr. Khan, thank you so much for the insight, not only through an academic perspective, but also through a perspective of how to get through to Australia and to the university. It was quite detailing and very interesting. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Suman. Thank you, Harleen ma'am, and thank you, all of you, my dear students from Chitkara. It was a great pleasure to interact and to discuss with you. Feel free to send me an email, but when you send an email, mention Chitkara University in your subject heading, so I know where you are coming from. Okay, I wish you all the best for your study and for your future career, which I'm sure will be glorious. But make sure you go through EBM basic skills and follow the 5 A's. Okay, it's equally applicable to all the courses.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, sir. One information to all the attendees: if you're not able to reach Dr. Sohail on his mail ID, you can just mail the questions to us. We can forward him. Will that be okay, sir?
Yeah, that's perfectly fine.
Okay, so if you have any questions, you can mail it to me or either to Harleen ma'am, and we will forward it further. Okay. Okay, so thank you for the session. Thank you for your time. We hope to see you soon with another session like this.
Or
Okay.
probably see you in person next year for the Global Week.
I hope so. I'm looking forward to.
Likewise.
Thank you. See you everyone. Stay safe. Bye.
All right. Bye.
Thank you, sir.